The colony ship Starfall drifts through the vast emptiness of space, and James Carter, a lonely human colonist, faces the unimaginable. A marriage proposal from an alien bride, sight unseen. With just 24 hours to decide, he's torn between the promise of companionship and the terrifying unknown. As he presses accept, his life is thrown into a whirlwind of alien customs, secrets, and ancient curses. But what if the woman he's about to marry isn't who she claims to be? What if the curse is real? The journey of a lifetime begins now, and James must decide. Will love conquer all, or will it destroy him? If you're new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. James Carter sat alone in a small, dimly lit room aboard the colony ship Starfall, staring at the blinking message on his screen. The soft hum of the ship echoed through the walls, and the silence around him felt deafening. He rubbed his face with his hands, trying to focus, but the words on the screen seemed to mock him. The message had appeared out of nowhere, interrupting his usual late-night routine of working on the ship's maintenance. He had never expected his life to change in such an absurd way. The screen displayed one simple line: proposal. Marriage to alien bride. Sight unseen. Acceptance required within 24 hours. At first he thought it was some kind of prank, something designed to take his mind off the isolation that plagued his life on this lonely colony. But the official stamp at the bottom told him otherwise. It was real. The message had come from the Intergalactic Marriage Council, a powerful body that oversaw interspecies relationships. The words felt like a weight pressing on his chest. James had come to the outer colonies to escape the crowded, fast-paced life on Earth. He wanted to build something new, something meaningful. But all he had found was isolation and the unrelenting silence of deep space. Life here was hard. There were few women, far too many lonely men, and even fewer chances to connect with someone. He had hoped that the colony would be a fresh start, but it had only magnified his loneliness. The thought of living in this silence for the rest of his days was unbearable, but a marriage proposal to an alien woman? That was beyond anything he could have imagined. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. What was this alien race like? The Alvari, according to the message, were said to be graceful, with skin as pale as moonlight. Their voices were melodic, their eyes deep pools of ancient wisdom. But other rumors circulated. Some said the Alvari were beautiful but dangerous, hiding dark secrets beneath their serene exteriors. No human had ever seen one completely unveiled and lived to tell the story. Some believed they were monsters, not the peaceful beings the council portrayed them to be. James's mind raced. What if this was a trick? What if they weren't kind at all? What if the stories about their true nature were right? A chill ran down his spine as he imagined what he might be walking into. Yet deep inside, another voice whispered, what if they were wrong? What if, in this sea of isolation, this strange and mysterious proposal could be his chance for something more, something real? He rubbed his eyes, trying to clear the haze of doubt clouding his mind. The message was clear. The marriage would be binding. If he accepted, he would be expected to live on the alien's world, wherever that might be. There would be no way out once he said yes. And the strangest part was that he would have to accept her without ever seeing her face first. He didn't even know what she looked like, only that she was out there, somewhere in the vastness of space, waiting for him. The clock on his screen ticked down with cruel precision. He had 24 hours to make his decision. James stood up and paced the small room, his boots thudding softly against the metal floor. Outside, the stars stretched like frozen rivers across the black sky, and the lights of distant planets twinkled faintly in the distance. Somewhere out there, his future waited. But was it a dream, or was it the beginning of a nightmare? He thought about the life he had left behind on Earth, the bustling cities, the endless noise, the way no one truly looked at one another anymore. He thought about the loneliness that had followed him even here, across light years of space. There were no friendly faces, no one to share the long nights with. The quiet of the colony ship was suffocating, and his thoughts seemed to echo off the empty walls. Maybe, just maybe, a strange bride, unseen and unknown, was better than facing more empty days and nights. The thought was unsettling, yet strangely comforting. He could hardly believe he was even considering it, but the loneliness gnawed at him, a hunger that only a human connection could satisfy. Another soft chime rang from the screen, snapping him out of his thoughts. The countdown was ticking faster now, and he could feel the pressure building. His heart hammered in his chest. James sat down again, his hands trembling slightly as he hovered over the keyboard. The decision was so simple, yet so enormous. To say yes meant stepping into the unknown, into a life with someone he had never seen, someone who might not even want him. He would be bound to her, to a life far away from Earth, and there would be no going back. But then he thought about the hope. The chance, however small, to find someone who wanted him for who he was. Not for his failures, not for his mistakes. Could this really be his chance for a real connection? Could an alien, a stranger from another world, offer him something more than the silence that had been his only companion for so long? With a deep breath, James pressed the button to confirm his acceptance. The screen blinked, then went dark for a moment. The words, "Transport arranged. Prepare for immediate departure," appeared on the screen. It was done. The weight of the moment settled into his bones. There was no turning back now. He had said yes. And somewhere out there, an alien bride awaited him, her face still hidden, her heart still a mystery. As the message faded from the screen, James couldn't help but wonder what his new life would be like. Would she be kind? Would she be cruel? Was this some kind of political game played by forces far beyond him? Or would it be the beginning of something he had only dreamed of? The countdown was over. James had made his choice, and now there was no turning back. James sat silently in the small shuttle, staring out of the tiny window as the stars passed by. The soft hum of the engines was the only sound inside the cramped cabin, and yet it was the loudest thing in his mind. His heart raced with excitement and dread, both battling for dominance. It had been hours since he pressed the acceptance button, committing himself to a future he could never have imagined. The shuttle was small, sleek, and built for speed. It had been specially designed for intergalactic travel, a transport vessel that could carry passengers across vast distances in a matter of days. Despite the comfort of the leather seat and the smooth motion of the shuttle, James couldn't shake the unease in his chest. The proposal had been accepted, but what now? What lay ahead? Outside the window, the stars stretched into infinity, their bright pinpricks of light scattered like diamonds against the blackness. James tried to focus on the beauty of it, but his mind kept drifting back to the decision he had made. He had chosen a life with someone he had never seen. How could he be so sure of this choice? He had no answers, only questions. The silence inside the shuttle felt suffocating, and for the first time in days, James wished for the comforting noise of Earth's bustling cities. The hum of traffic, the chatter of people, the distant calls of street vendors, anything to drown out the questions that filled his mind. But there was nothing here. Just the endless stretch of space outside the window and the constant hum of the shuttle's engines. Hours passed slowly, each moment feeling longer than the last. James tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. His thoughts spiraled into endless loops of what-ifs and maybes. What if the alien bride didn't like him? What if she was nothing like the stories he had heard? What if he had made a terrible mistake? The shuttle's lights dimmed slightly as the artificial gravity adjusted, and James sighed, rubbing his face. He hadn't been this unsure of anything in a long time. Maybe it was the uncertainty that came with the unknown, or maybe it was just the sheer audacity of his decision. He had agreed to marry an alien, sight unseen. No one else in the colony had done anything like it, and yet something deep inside him stirred with hope. Maybe this was what he had been waiting for all his life. Maybe this was his chance to truly live, to experience something new, something beyond the mundane life he had known. His life on Earth had been full of noise but empty of meaning. Here, in the silence of space, he had a chance to start over. As if on cue, the shuttle's voice system crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. "We are approaching your destination," the robotic voice announced, calm and clear. "Please, prepare for landing." James's heart skipped a beat. It was time. He had been traveling for days, and now the moment had come to face the unknown. He stood up from his seat, his legs feeling stiff from the long hours spent sitting, and moved toward the small window. Outside, a planet came into view. It was blue and green, its surface dotted with clouds and shimmering oceans. Zorath, his new home, his new life. The shuttle began to descend, and James felt the smooth pull of gravity as it aligned with the planet's atmosphere. The engines hummed louder as they prepared for landing, and the shuttle's thrusters kicked in, slowing their descent. James's pulse quickened as the ground below grew closer. He had made his choice. Now there was no turning back. The shuttle touched down with a soft jolt, and James felt a momentary sense of relief. He had arrived. The doors hissed open, and the sterile air of the shuttle bay was replaced by the fresh, strange air of the planet Zorath. It was warm, with a hint of something floral in the breeze, a smell unlike anything he had ever encountered. Two figures stood waiting outside the shuttle. One human, wearing the official uniform of the Intergalactic Marriage Council, and the other a tall, slender figure with silvery skin. The alien being was unmistakably Corin, the race his bride belonged to. The Corin's features were hidden behind a long, flowing robe, and its face was obscured by the shadows of its hood. James stepped out of the shuttle, his legs feeling weak as he stood on the soft soil of Zorath for the first time. The Corin guide stepped forward and gestured toward him. "Welcome, James Carter," the guide said in a voice that was calm, almost melodic. "Your bride awaits." James nodded, his throat dry. The excitement that had surged through him earlier had been replaced by a sudden uncertainty. What was he walking into? What kind of life awaited him on this strange planet? He was led through the ship's docking area and into the heart of the colony. The landscape was unlike anything he had seen before. Towering trees with glowing leaves stretched into the sky, their trunks winding like twisted vines. The air was thick with the scent of alien flowers, and soft, glowing lights floated in the air like fireflies. It was beautiful, but eerie at the same time. As they walked, James couldn't help but notice the curious stares of the Corin villagers. Some of them smiled, while others eyed him warily. Whispers rippled through the crowd as he passed, but no one spoke directly to him. He felt like an outsider, and the weight of that was heavier than he had anticipated. The guide led him to a large stone platform where the ceremony was set to take place. The platform was surrounded by dozens of silent figures, all dressed in the same flowing robes. James felt a surge of nerves in his stomach. This was it. The moment when he would meet his bride, the woman he had agreed to marry without ever having seen her. At the far side of the platform, a single figure stood waiting. She was veiled, her face hidden from view, but James could sense her presence. There was a quiet strength in her stance, and for a moment, all he could do was stare at her, his heart pounding in his chest. He had no idea what she would look like, who she really was, but deep down, he knew that this moment would change everything. As he approached, the figure turned slightly, and James could hear the soft rustle of her robes. The ceremony was about to begin, and James felt a strange mix of excitement, fear, and anticipation. This was the beginning of something completely new. Whatever lay ahead, it would be their journey together. And as the elder Corin stepped forward to begin the vows, James made a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened next, he would face it with an open heart. The future, it seemed, was just beginning. James spent the first few days on Zorath in a haze of new experiences, each more bizarre and captivating than the last. The lush forests, the strange flora that glowed under the twin suns, the soft hum of alien creatures in the distance, it was all overwhelming. He was living in a world that felt both beautiful and alien, a world where everything was unfamiliar, and he had no idea where to begin understanding it. Seraphine, his new bride, remained veiled, her face still hidden beneath the layers of silken cloth. She had been kind but distant, and every time James tried to engage her in conversation, she would offer short, polite answers, but never reveal anything about herself. It felt as though a wall had been built between them, a wall that James couldn't see but could definitely feel. He knew she had her reasons for keeping her distance, but the silence was becoming harder to bear. One afternoon, as James was walking through the lush garden near their new home, he noticed Seraphine sitting alone by a small stream, her head bowed as she stared into the water. Her robe, shimmering with soft hues of blue and silver, fluttered gently in the breeze. James hesitated for a moment before approaching her. "Seraphine?" he called softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned slightly but didn't look up at him. "James," she said in a soft voice, her tone as melodic as it had always been, but there was an edge of sadness in it now. He sat down beside her, the cool grass under his legs feeling comforting in contrast to the tension that had been growing between them. "You've been so distant," he said, his voice gentle but filled with concern. "I know we don't know each other well, but I want to get to know you. I want to understand you." Seraphine's shoulders tensed, and she finally turned her gaze toward him, though her eyes were still hidden beneath the veil. "You cannot understand me," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. James frowned. "Why? Why can't I understand you?" She took a deep breath, as though gathering the courage to say something difficult. The silence stretched on for several moments before she finally spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I wasn't born like other Corin," she began, her hands nervously twisting the edge of her robe. "I was born between worlds." James raised an eyebrow, not understanding. "What do you mean, between worlds?" Seraphine looked away, her gaze fixed on the stream as if the answers lay in the ripples of water. "My mother was human," she continued. "She came to Zorath seeking knowledge, and she fell in love with my father, an Elvari scholar. But the laws of our people forbid such unions. The Elvari believe that our bloodlines must remain pure, untouched by the outside world. My mother's love for my father was forbidden, and so they tried to hide me." James's heart tightened at the sorrow in her voice. He could hear the weight of her words, the pain that had been buried deep inside her for so long. "But why didn't you tell me this before? Why hide it?" Seraphine hesitated, her voice wavering. "Because I feared what you would think. My existence is a curse in the eyes of the council. They believe that I carry death in my blood, that I am a threat to both worlds. They believe that I should never have been born." James's breath caught in his throat as he tried to comprehend what she was saying. "A curse?" She nodded, her hands shaking. "Yes. The council believed that if a human accepted me, it would break the curse. But they feared it would also destroy the union, bring madness or sickness. So they made a law. A human must choose me without seeing me, without knowing who I truly am. Only then, when love has been proven, can the veil be lifted and the curse be broken." James sat in stunned silence. He had no idea the weight of the decision he had made when he accepted her proposal. He had thought he was choosing love, but now he realized that he had unknowingly stepped into a tangled web of ancient laws and beliefs. "I didn't choose this," Seraphine continued, her voice breaking. "I didn't ask for this curse. But the council, they made me a symbol, a test. If you love me, they believe the curse will be lifted, and peace can be forged between our people, but I am nothing more than a tool to them." James placed a hand on hers, the warmth of her skin a stark contrast to the coolness of her words. "I didn't choose you because of some law," he said softly. "I chose you because I want to be with you. I want to learn who you are, all of you." Seraphine's eyes, still hidden beneath the veil, glistened with unshed tears. "You don't understand, James. There is no escaping it. There are too many rules, too many people who see me as nothing but a curse. They will never accept us. They will never accept me." James shook his head, his resolve hardening. "Then let's make our own path," he said, his voice filled with determination. We don't need the council's approval. We don't need anyone's approval. We have each other. And that's enough. Seraphine looked up at him, her hands trembling in his. The softness in her eyes spoke volumes, and for the first time, James saw a flicker of hope in her gaze. He realized that, despite everything, despite the curse, despite the council's laws, there was a bond between them. A bond that no one could break. "I never thought someone would accept me," she whispered. "Not like this. Not without fear. Not without doubt." James squeezed her hands gently, his voice steady. "Then let me be the one to show you that. Love can break the curse. Together we'll create our own future." As the two of them sat by the stream, the weight of Seraphine's past hung in the air, but James knew that they had taken the first step toward healing. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, but for the first time since he arrived on Zorath, James felt a sense of peace. They were not alone anymore, and together they would face whatever came next, with courage, love, and an unbreakable bond. Seraphine's silence seemed to soften as she looked at him, and for the first time, the veil felt less like a barrier and more like a symbol of the trust they had begun to build. She had shared her secret, her hidden truth, and James had accepted it. And in that acceptance, something beautiful was growing, a future they would shape together. The days on Zorath grew longer, and James and Seraphine's bond began to deepen, though the shadow of the curse still loomed over them. The villagers had begun to speak more openly about the two of them, and the whispers followed them wherever they went. James could see the fear in their eyes, the same fear that Seraphine had carried her whole life. The council's rules and the centuries-old prejudices were deeply ingrained, and no matter how much love James poured into his marriage, the weight of those ancient laws pressed heavily on their shoulders. The veil that had once seemed like a symbol of hope and trust now felt like a shackle around their relationship. James had known from the start that this bond would be different. The Corrin had their rules, their traditions, and he was an outsider. He had married Seraphine not for the promise of beauty or wealth, but for love. Yet every day the walls around them seemed to grow taller. One evening, after another long day of avoiding the villagers' gaze and hearing their hushed conversations, James and Seraphine sat in their small home. The air was thick with unspoken words, the silence between them heavier than usual. Seraphine's hands trembled as she folded the robe she had worn to the market. James watched her, his heart aching for the woman who had been forced into a role she never asked for. Her face still hidden, the mystery of who she truly was, both as a person and a member of her alien race, remained locked away, sealed under the veil. The only part of her he could see were her hands, delicate and beautiful, though worn with the weight of years spent hiding from the world. "We can't keep living like this," James said quietly, breaking the silence that had been hanging over them like a storm cloud. "The curse, the rules, it's all tearing us apart. I won't lose you because of some ancient law." Seraphine didn't respond immediately, but James could see the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to believe in what he was saying, wanted to trust that they could fight against the fate that had been thrust upon her. But the fear was still there, the fear of the unknown, the fear of breaking the rules that had been set for her before she was even born. "I've been thinking about what you said," she finally whispered, "about breaking the chains, but you don't know what it's like to carry this weight, to be marked before you even take your first breath." James moved closer to her, taking her hands in his. He didn't need to see her face to know that. She was hurting, and he would do whatever it took to take that pain away. "I know it's not easy, but I love you, Seraphine, and I'll stand by you. We don't have to let these chains bind us any longer. Together we can break them. We can make a new path." Seraphine looked at him, her veil still hiding her face, but James could see the flicker of hope in her eyes. For the first time, he saw a glimmer of trust, a trust that wasn't weighed down by fear. She had always believed that love had to be proven before it could break the curse, but now she seemed to be beginning to believe in something else. She seemed to believe in him. "We have to confront the council," James continued, his voice steady. "We can't let them decide our future for us. We have to face them and show them that love doesn't follow their laws. Love is stronger than that. Seraphine took a deep breath. Her shoulders squared, and James could feel the tension in her body as she made a decision. She was finally ready to fight for herself, for them, and for the life they could have together. The very next day, James and Seraphine made their way to the village center, where the council elders gathered in a large, open square. The people of Zorath had always feared the council, seeing them as the ultimate authority in all matters. The council's word was law, and to go against them was to invite disaster. But James wasn't afraid of them. He was afraid of losing Seraphine, of losing the only thing that truly mattered in this world. As they approached the council's gathering place, the villagers parted to make way for them, their eyes filled with fear, curiosity, and judgment. James could feel the tension in the air, the silent whispers that followed them, but he stood tall. He had made his decision, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The council's leader, an elder woman with a stern face and a golden mask, stepped forward as they approached. The others followed suit, their robes flowing around them like dark clouds. They were the gatekeepers of Zorath's old ways, and they had the power to crush anyone who stood in their path. "You are out of place here, James Carter," the elder said, her voice like ice. "You have broken the law. You have seen her, before the bond was completed. You have doomed this union." James stood firm, his voice unwavering. "I chose Seraphine, not for the rules, not for the curse, but because I love her. And no law, no council can change that. You do not have the power to dictate our future. We will live by our own terms, not yours." The villagers who had gathered to watch began to murmur, some nodding in agreement, while others exchanged fearful glances. For the first time, James saw something shift in the crowd. The fear that had once bound them to the council's rule was beginning to crack. The elder raised her staff, her face hidden behind the mask, but James could see the tremor in her hands. "You are defying the very laws that have kept our people safe for centuries. You are a fool." James didn't flinch. "Then call me a fool. But I will not live in fear anymore. I will not live in a world where love is bound by chains and laws. We will fight for our future together." A long silence followed, the weight of his words settling over the crowd. Then, to James's surprise, one by one, the villagers began to step forward. A woman, her face wrinkled with age, placed a hand on James's shoulder. "We have lived in fear for too long," she said quietly. "It's time for us to change." Another man, a young father, stepped forward with his child in his arms. "We will follow you," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "Love is stronger than fear." And with that, the floodgates opened. One by one, the villagers stepped forward, their voices rising in support of James and Seraphine. The council elders looked on in shock, their grip on the village loosening as the people began to break free from the chains that had held them for so long. The elder with the golden mask trembled, her staff shaking in her hands. "You cannot defy us," she hissed. "You cannot change the law." James stepped forward, his voice strong. The law was never meant to control love, and now it will change. The council had no choice but to stand down. Their power had crumbled in the face of truth and love. The villagers, once afraid to speak out, had found their courage. As James and Seraphine walked away from the council's gathering place, hand in hand, they knew that they had broken the chains. The future was no longer a prison. It was an open path, and they would walk it together.